Namaste and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we would be analyzing the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper of 22nd May 2018. Now let us begin. Now we have taken this article from page 8. Now what this article talks about is that India and China must cooperate on regional connectivity projects. Now the reason given by the author as to why India and China should cooperate on regional connectivity projects. The first reason is that joint initiatives can improve the conditions of all the member countries. And the second reason given by the author is that it would decrease the trust deficit between India and China. Now the second aspect that the author talks about is the hurdle to India-China cooperation, wherein according to the author, both India and China have separate connectivity infrastructure projects and are reluctant to cooperate. Wherein India is reluctant to cooperate with China's Belt Road Initiative due to the sovereignty issues with regards to CPEC or China-Pakistan Economic Corridor passing through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. However, the author does not go into the specifics as to why India and China are reluctant to cooperate with each other, wherein the author does specify various means of cooperation, wherein the BIMSTEC project and BBIN, which is a connectivity project between Bangladesh, Bhutan, India and Nepal, which according to the author can incorporate China. And in similar terms, according to the author, India can cooperate on specific projects under China's Belt Road Initiative. Now hopefully up till here you've understood the focus of the article, wherein according to the author, India and China should cooperate on regional connectivity projects. And the reason according to the author, India and China should cooperate on regional connectivity projects is that joint initiatives can benefit all the member countries and also decrease the trust deficit that exists between India and China. Moreover, the author also highlights the hurdles to India-China cooperation on regional connectivity projects, wherein both India and China have separate connectivity infrastructure projects and are reluctant to cooperate with each other. However, the author does not go into the specifics as to why both India and China are reluctant to cooperate with each other, wherein one example is India's sovereignty issues with China's project of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor or CPEC that runs through the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. However, the author does highlight various means of cooperation between India and China, wherein the BIMSTEC and the BBIN initiatives led by India can incorporate China, and in similar terms, India can cooperate on specific projects under the Belt Road Initiative of China. Now with regards to your UPSC syllabus, this article and the explanation given in this section would be placed in GS Paper 2 in the International Relations section. And so now with this, we move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 9. Now what this article highlights is the significance of democracy, the significance of election, the voting procedure, and what constitutes as good governance. Now this article is very relevant with regards to your UPSC mains examination, and therefore let us understand the various aspects that have been highlighted in this article. Now the first question that the article tries to highlight is what is the relationship between elections and democracy. Now the principle of one person, one vote is seen as the defining principle of democracy. However, according to the author, the belief that elections are principle of democracy has reduced the scope of democracy to only the election procedure, rather than considering democracy as a dynamic and continuous process. Therefore, according to the author, free and fair elections are a necessary procedure for an effective democracy, but elections should be considered as a component within the larger framework of democracy, and thereby conducting an election procedure should not be considered as being complete democracy in itself. Now the second question that the article highlights is what is the significance of voting. According to the author, voting provides an opportunity to choose a representative from different candidates. However, voting is not merely a task of choosing a representative, and according to the author, it should be considered as a mean to hold an elected representative accountable towards good governance. And therefore, the significance of voting should not be limited to choosing a representative, but should be seen as a mean to control the act of elected representatives governing in an undemocratic manner. Now the third question the article highlights is why are elections important? Now according to the author, elections are based on the fundamental principle that all of us have equal say in governance. And we have equal say in governance because all of us have equal claim to public goods in the society. And therefore, according to the author, voting provides an ability to electing a representative to take care of a share of the public domain. And according to the author, this fundamental principle is based on the principle of trusteeship that was articulated by Mahatma Gandhi. and was influenced by such individuals as J.R.D. Tata, wherein the trusteeship principle is based on the fact that elected representatives are merely trustees on our behalf. And according to the author, elections therefore is one of the implementing means of an effective democracy. Now, the fourth question highlighted in the article is how is the reduction of democracy to the scope of an election affected India? Now, according to the author, by reducing democracy to the singular act of an election procedure, India has constituted a form of undemocratic society, wherein, for example, political parties in India, which are also a mean of democracy, have, according to the author, very little democratic ethos within their framework, wherein they have opaque decision making processes, family oriented leadership, cosmetic elections, among other undemocratic factors. Apart from this, the author also highlights the elected representatives, rather than being trustees of their voters' share of public wealth, they consider themselves as inheritors of the voters' share of public wealth. Similarly, elected representatives, rather than taking decision by considering the interest of the wide spectrum of their voters, they take decisions based on their self-interest. And therefore, according to the author, the reduction of democracy to a scope of an election has made election a procedure of voting for a ruler to govern above us, rather than a procedure to vote for a trustee to govern on our behalf. And therefore, according to the author, by reducing democracy to a scope of an election procedure, it has negatively affected good governance in India. Now, the fifth and last question is how can good governance be constituted? Now, according to the author, good governance flows from effective democracy, which involves all citizens in the conduct of political processes. And according to the author, the act of voting is the major form of placing citizens in the political process. However, as soon as the procedure of elections end, the voter has no means to alter the political process, and this leads to elected representatives not being bound by the principle of trusteeship, and thereby increases alienation among people, and therefore, according to the author, leads to people's movements against the government. Therefore, according to the author, good governance requires democratizing other components of an effective democracy, such as responsible political institution, public participation in governance, among other means. Now, hopefully up till here, you've understood the various aspects that are highlighted in this article. And with regards to your UPSC syllabus, this article and the explanation given in this section with regards to good governance, significance of elections, significance of voting, among other factors highlighted in this section, would be placed in GS paper 2 in the governance section, more specifically, important aspects of governance, transparency and accountability. And moreover, this section would also be placed in your GS paper 4 in the subsection probability in governance. Moreover, previously questions have been asked on these aspects, where I have taken all these three questions from the mains examination of 2016. Wherein the first two questions are from GS paper 2 and the last question is from GS paper 4. When the first question asks to discuss the relationship between the effectiveness of the government system and people's participation in the governance system, while similarly the second question asks to discuss briefly the political factors that have caused the decline of public morality in India. And similarly, the third question asks what do you understand by the term governance, good governance, and ethical governance. And you would be able to answer these questions in part with the explanation given in this section. And so now with this, we move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 9. Now what this article talks about is the process of social audit in Meghalaya, wherein Meghalaya became the first state in India to pass a social audit law, wherein there is participation of citizens in implementing government schemes at the grassroots level. Now, the various aims, the Meghalaya Community Participation and Public Services Social Audit Act of 2017, wherein the first aim is to review delivery of public services and implementation of government schemes through a participatory social audit by the government and the stakeholders. Now, the second main aim of the Act is to enhance citizens' ownership in the development initiatives undertaken by the government and also to initiate course correction measures. Apart from this, the social audit provides a platform for airing public grievances and suggestions from the people. Now, hopefully, up till here, you've understood the focus of this article, wherein it highlights the various experiences of the social audit in Meghalaya, wherein Meghalaya became the first state in India to pass a social audit law, thereby enhancing participation of citizens in implementing government schemes. Now, the various aims of the Meghalaya Community Participation and Public Services Social Audit Act of 2017, wherein the first aim is to review delivery of public services and implementation of government schemes through participatory social audit, which is conducted by both the government and the stakeholders. The second main aim is to enhance citizens' ownership in the development initiatives undertaken by the government, and thereby also initiating course correction measures whenever they are necessary. And finally, the third main aim of the Act is to provide a platform for airing of public grievances and also to provide a platform for undertaking suggestions from the people. Now, the main benefit, as highlighted by the authors of the Meghalaya Social Audit Law, is that it provides inclusive governance, as it is a credible platform for citizens' participation. And according to the authors, the social audit practices provided in Meghalaya can be implemented throughout India. Now, with regards to your UPSC syllabus, this article and the explanation given in this section with the specifics of the case study of social audit system in Meghalaya would be placed in your GS paper 2 in the governance section. More specifically, important aspects of governance, transparency, and accountability. And in similar terms, it would also be placed in your GS paper 4 in probability in governance. And so now with this, we move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 8. Now what this article talks about is the crisis in higher education in India. Now the author gives the recent example of the interview of Steve Wozniak, who is the co-founder of Apple, wherein during the interview, when Steve Wozniak was asked to explain the problems underlying the higher education system in India, he had predicted that Indians are unlikely to create world-leading IT companies because they lack the creativity to do so, and argued that this has to do with the Indian education system, wherein the lack of creativity in the Indian education system is because rote learning is rewarded over independent thought. Now, according to the author, the reason why there is a crisis in higher education in India, wherein the education system in India is over-regulated and under-governed, wherein according to the author, there is overemphasis on rules and regulations in Indian education systems, such as minimum attendance, subject criteria, among other factors, but the quality of education is not being properly governed. Wherein the author also further highlights the argument given by Amartya Sen that Indian education policy has been shaped by the aspirations of the middle class, which emphasizes education to get a job rather than fulfilling the creative aspects of a person's personality. Moreover, the author also highlights that universities in India do not encourage puzzle-based thinking, which means education based on solving contemporary challenges and emphasize upon rote-based learning. Now, hopefully, up till here, you've understood that according to the author, there is a crisis in higher education in India, wherein the author has given the example of a recent interview of Steve Wozniak, who is a co-founder of Apple, wherein Steve Wozniak had said that Indians are unlikely to create world-leading IT companies because they lack the creativity to do so, and argued that this has to do with the education system in India, because the education system in India rewards rote learning over independent thought, and this creates a lack of creativity among those who have been passed out by the Indian education system. Now, according to the author, the reason there is a crisis in higher education in India because the education system in India is over-regulated and under-governed. Moreover, the author also gives the example of Amartya Sen, according to whom Indian education policy has been shaped by the aspirations of the Indian middle class, which has emphasized education for getting a good job rather than an education that fulfills the creativity of a person. Moreover, according to the author, universities do not encourage puzzle-based thinking, which is education based on solving contemporary challenges. And according to the author, universities emphasize on rote learning. Now, the author has also given several points on how to overcome the crisis in higher education in India. Wherein the first mean, according to the author, is to have qualitative assessments of teacher rather than the quantitative assessment under the academic performance indicator given by the UGC. The second mean given by the author is to have student evaluation of courses. The third mean given by the author is that UGC should remove experience related considerations as a means for teachers for career advancement. Now, what the author means is that a person in higher education in India is entitled for promotion based on the number of years he has spent on the job rather than any qualitative assessment on what he has contributed within that time period. Now, hopefully, up till here, you've also understood as a means to overcome the crisis in higher education in India, wherein the first point, according to the author, is that qualitative assessment of teachers should be undertaken rather than the quantitative assessment that is currently being undertaken under the Academic Performance Indicator system of the UGC or the University Grants Commission. Moreover, according to the author, there should be a student evaluation of the courses they are going to be taught. And lastly, according to the author, UGC should remove experience as a means for teachers for career advancement, wherein a faculty in higher education in India gets a promotion based on the numbers of years he has spent on the job rather than the quality of the work that he has undertaken within that time period. And therefore, according to the author, experience, which is a quantitative figure in terms of year, should be replaced by a qualitative assessment to judge what the faculty has contributed towards his field and towards the students. Now, hopefully, you have understood as to what the author highlights with regards to the causes of crisis in higher education system in India and what are the means, according to the author, to overcome the crisis in higher education in India. Now, with regards to UPSC syllabus, this article and the explanation given in this section would be placed in GS paper 2 in the subsection Issues relating to development and management of education, wherein previously a similar question has been asked in your UPSC mains examination, which had been asked in GS paper 2 in the year 2016, which had asked that Professor Amartya Sen has advocated important reforms in the realms of primary education and primary healthcare. What are your suggestions to improve their status and performance? Now, in similar terms, a question can be asked on what are your suggestions to improve the status and performance of higher education in India. And the problems and means given in this article with regards to the crisis in higher education in India would thereby become relevant with regards to that question. And so now with this, we move on to the next article. Now we have taken this article from page 8. Now the reason this article is in the news is that after the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code was announced in 2016, the Reserve Bank of India had referred a list of 12 accounts which had high NPAs or non-performing assets to the National Company Law Tribunal for resolution under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. And under this, one case has been successfully resolved. Now hopefully you have understood as to why this article is in the news. That after the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code was announced in 2016, RBI had referred 12 accounts with high non-performing assets to the National Company Law Tribunal for resolution under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. And within those referred cases, the first case has been successfully resolved under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Now the article highlights various future challenges with regards to the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, wherein the first challenge highlighted in the article is that strict eligibility criteria for bidders has made it less efficient for the parties. The second challenge highlighted in the article is that stringent time limits for the resolution process has made it difficult the timely resolution and recoveries. And the final challenge highlighted in the article is that Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code should primarily focus upon maximizing the sale price of the stressed asset. Now hopefully you have also understood the focus of this article, wherein it highlights the future challenges with the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, wherein the first challenge according to the article is the strict eligibility criteria for bidders has made the process less efficient. The second challenge highlighted in the article is that the stringent time limits for resolution process has made it difficult for a timely resolution and maximizing recoveries from the parties. And the final challenge highlighted in this article is that the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code should primarily focus on maximizing the sale price of the stressed assets. And now with this, we come to an end in the analysis of today's paper. Now we move on to the question for today.